Welcome or welcome back to Lift You Up Inspiring Health Stories. I'm your host, Tamika Bickham. I'm the founder and chief storyteller of TB Media Group. But for the purpose of this podcast, I am your health and happiness matchmaker. Now, before I introduce you to today's guest, you know what I'm going to ask you to do. If you haven't already, go ahead, hit subscribe on YouTube, turn on those notifications, and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to stay connected with you. Now, today, I'm going to introduce you to an ultramarathon runner. His name is Dean Karnazes. He was also voted Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. And truly, he deserves it. I mean, this man has ran 50-mile runs, 100-mile runs. I am not a runner. If you aren't, that's okay. He's inspiring with his story, which is truly out of this world, and also giving us some tips on how he stays healthy. And if you're interested in starting running, how to even get started. Our physical, mental, and emotional health is not just a want. It is a need for happy lives and prosperous businesses. Lift You Up is the podcast where we share inspiring health stories from business owners who are fulfilling their purpose to live their healthiest lives and helping you do the same. From former TV reporter to marketing entrepreneur and content creator, I care about sharing stories that matter and stories that connect us. I'm your host, Tamika Bickham, your health and wellness matchmaker. Well, today I'm so excited to meet for the first time Dean Karnazes. Hi, Dean.
How are you?
Welcome to the show.
It's good to be on. Thanks for having me run by.
But no pun intended. Based on that, Dean is an American ultra marathon runner. You are an author, and I'm sure so much more. So I'll let you go ahead and share a little bit about you.
Well, I'm basically a long distance runner.
Yeah.
I've run 50 marathons in all of the 50 U.S. states in 50 days.
Oh my gosh.
I've run on all 7 continents of Earth twice now. So I've run across the Sahara Desert in the summer, and I've run a marathon to the South Pole. So the hottest place on Earth and the coldest place on Earth. You're right, I'm also an author. I've written 5 books, and a couple of them have been New York Times bestsellers. So I do some writing as well, and you can check out any of my books if you're interested in learning more. But I'm a storyteller. The books are they're stories, they're adventure stories. So if you want to get engaged and learn about this crazy world of ultramarathoning, pick up a book.
Yeah, well, I hope we can dive into ultra marathoning a little bit today, and let's start from the beginning, because I feel like our journeys all kind of lead us down this path that ultimately might not be linear, but ultimately make us who we are and make sense. So I read that you started running for fun. Was it in kindergarten?
Yeah, I started running home from kindergarten. I was the oldest of 3 children, and when my youngest sister came along, my mom was having a hard time getting me home, and so I told her, "Mom, don't worry about it. I'll just run," and she let me. I mean, it was a different era back then.
Yeah.
But I found that I really enjoyed running home. I mean, we tell kids when they're young to sit still and pay attention. And that's kind of counterintuitive. Every kid wants to, not pay attention and go wild. So I would pay attention until the bell rang, and then I would just run out of class and run home.
So you liked it from a very early age when it came to running.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of how I started relating to the world, is through running. I just remember, the seasons changing. I remember the air would smell different, and it'd feel different on my skin. The leaves would change colors, and I thought sitting in the classroom wasn't the best way to get educated. I thought being out in the world was the best way to be educated.
Ah, yes, I like that. So you enjoy running as a young kid, and at what point does this turn into what it is now. Obviously, there's a big gap in space of time in between. Hey, I'm running home from school to, you ran 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 days. Oh my, whoa. So, how does that love for running evolve over the years?
Yeah, well, I ran competitively when I was younger. So I ran competitively up until I was a freshman in high school. And we won the cross country championships. And I thought that's as far as I can take my running. I was
Mm-hmm.
15 years old, and I thought running's boring. There's better ways to spend my time than running. So I quit running when I was 15, and
You thought it was boring?
I thought it was boring at that point. I'm like, well, I'm spending so much
Okay.
time running that there's got to be better ways to spend my time. I was a teenager. Teenagers, your mind is all over the place. So I somehow graduated from high school, and then I got into college. I somehow graduated from college, and I thought, okay, I need a graduate degree. So I somehow made it through graduate school, and then I decided, oh, I need a business degree. So I somehow got an MBA, and I had a very
I think you're
comfortable
selling
corporate
yourself
job. Yeah,
short
I mean,
here.
yeah, I was in my late 20s. I had a plush office in San Francisco as a marketing executive. I had a company car, stock options, a fat paycheck, 401k matching, healthcare, all those things. And those are supposed to bring us happiness, right? We're kind of told if we get a good education, get a good job, happiness will follow. Well, I did those things, and emptiness followed. And on the night of my 30th birthday, I was in a bar in San Francisco doing what a lot of us do on our 30th birthdays. I was celebrating with my friends. And at midnight, I told them I was leaving. And they said, hold it, it's your 30th birthday. The night is young. Let's have another round of tequila to celebrate. And I said, no, I'm gonna celebrate by running 30 miles right now instead. And they looked at me and they said, well, you're not a runner. You're drunk. And I said, I am, but I'm still going to do it. And I walked out of the bar, and I'll never forget, I didn't own running gear, but I had on these like comfortable silk boxer shorts, these silk underwear. So I just peeled off my pants, threw it down into the alleyway, and just started stumbling off into the night, heading south. I knew there was a town called Half Moon Bay that was 30 miles away. And I thought, what, just run to Half Moon Bay. I
You see
sobered
my
up about
face
10
right
miles.
now.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I want to hear how this ends. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, it didn't end, it wasn't pretty how it ended. I mean, there was some chafing and some blistering where the sun don't shine, but I somehow made it. I mean, I sobered up after about 10 miles, and I thought, what on earth am I doing? Like, this is crazy. But something just felt right. The stars were out, and I was on a backcountry road all by myself, and it was 2 in the morning, and I wasn't scared. I felt really kind of alive, like more alive than I'd ever felt before. So I just kept running, and about 7.5 hours later, the sun rose, and I made it to Half Moon Bay.
All right. So tell me what was going through your mind when on your 30th birthday you say to your friends at midnight, I'm going to run 30 miles. Was it a combination of the alcohol and the love for running? Or what was going on, I guess, and maybe now looking back at it in retrospect?
I didn't enjoy business. I won't say I wasn't a good business guy. I was half decent at it, but I hated it. I didn't feel like it was me. I wasn't a business. It wasn't who I was.
And by business, you mean like a corporate kind of lifestyle?
Yeah, corporate kind of life.
Yeah.
I wasn't into the corporate scene. And I kind of had I think an epiphany on that night. I kind of saw myself at 50 years old, and I thought, you're going to be 50 years old, you're going to be fat and bald, and you're going to drive a red Ferrari, and be on your third wife. Is this the life you want?
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, I'm going to run away from that because it's not who I am and it's not what I want. And so I just, maybe it was escapism, but I disappeared.
So yeah, that's what I was gonna say. From kind of hearing your story, it sounds like you were running away from, figuratively, who you were at that moment.
Yeah, the whole idea of happiness, I think uh, I had to figure it out. Yeah, I didn't achieve it by the time I was 30, and I thought you need to step back and figure this thing out because Life is short, and
Hmm.
you want to live it to the fullest.
So you hadn't run actually in 15 years, is that right? At that point?
That's absolutely right. Yep.
I want to know, what was the conversation like with your friends later on, the like, who was the first person you called? How did you get home?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm gonna date myself by saying this was before cell phones. So I ended up at a 7-Eleven, a convenience store,
Hmm.
and there was a payphone out in front, and I called my wife, and I woke her up. He called her collect, and she was obviously very concerned. She said, "You've never been out all night like this. I mean, I'm so worried about you. Is everything okay?" And I said, "Everything's fine. I need a ride home." And she said, "Oh, sure, no questions asked. I'll come get you. Where are you at?" And I said, "I'm out in front of 7-Eleven." And she said, the 7-Eleven on Geary Street. There was a 7-Eleven about a mile from our house. And I said, "No, the 7-Eleven in Half Moon Bay." And she said, "What? Half Moon Bay? How did you get there?" And I said, "I ran." And she said, "You ran from where?" And I said, I walked out of the bar and I ran to Half Moon Bay. And she said, "You don't sound very stable. Just hold tight. I'll be right there."
Oh my
And she
goodness.
drove down and picked me up.
Oh wow. That's an insane story. I love it though. Okay. So how is this where the switch happens and how you start running again and running marathons? What happens after this point?
Yeah, I start running again. So I'm living in San Francisco. I'm like becoming a runner, like a lot of runners can relate to. Every day or every other day, I'd go running, and I'd run like 3 to 5 miles. And I thought, wow, I'm getting pretty fit, and I thought, this is great. I'm in such wonderful shape. Like, I'm a long distance runner. And one day, these two guys passed me as I was running up a hill, and it was as though they were a different species. I mean, they were so fit, so far beyond my level. It just it shocked me. And they ran up over this hill, and I thought, God, I wish I could have talked to them to see what's going on with those guys. I get to the top of the hill, and they're up there doing push-ups. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to ask these guys what's going on.
Okay.
So I finally pried out of them that they were training for a 50-mile race. And I said, hold it, how far is it? Like, that's farther than a marathon, isn't it? And they said, yeah, a marathon's 26.2 miles. We're going to try to run 50 miles. And I could not get my head around this. I thought, that's impossible. Like, I can't drive 50 miles, let alone run 50 miles. A human can't do this.
Mhm.
And so I said to him, where are the campgrounds along the way, or where are the hotels? Like, where do you stop and sleep? And one guy just said, "No, but nobody. The gun goes off, and you start running, and you stop when you cross the finish line." And I was just so blown away by it. And the final thing I asked him is, like, where is this race? I thought, this is so crazy. I gotta try it. I just thought this conversation will stay with me the rest of my life, and I'll always wonder, could I pull it off? So I went to this 50-mile race, and let me tell you, it was the toughest thing I had ever done. I mean, it hurt so bad, and it took me, over 9 hours and of continuous running.
Oh my
And I was
goodness.
so wounded at the finish line. I remember I was sitting in a medic tent, with one of those Mylar sheets they put around runners. And I was just kind of sitting in there shivering, and I saw those two guys, and they were high-fiving each other. And I heard them say, we qualified. And I thought, well, what did you qualify for? The insane asylum? And they said, no, we qualified for the Western States 100-mile endurance run. And I said, hold it. Did you say 100 miles? And guy's like, yeah, it's a 100-mile race. And it's not only 100 miles, it's through the mountains on wilderness trails. And you got to cross a river. And I thought, well, how do you eat? How do you see at night? It's like you eat while you run. You put on a headlamp at night to light the trail, and you run, and you try to finish it in under 24 hours. And I just thought, that's impossible. Like, no human being can run for 24 hours. Like, that's A horse can't even do that. And the guy, the final thing he said to me as they were walking away is, "Hey, you know what, buddy? You qualified as well." And when he said you qualified as well, I just thought, I'll never live down this moment unless I try this.
You didn't realize that you qualified?
I didn't know. No, he said the qualification. I didn't even know about this 100-mile race, and he said that you had to finish in under 10 hours, and you made it. So you qualified for this 100-mile race.
Okay. All right. You got to explain something to the non-runner over here. um, and I will say, at one point in my college years, I used to run as much as 6 miles in a day. So anywhere between 3 and 6 miles. I'd say 4 to 5 times a week. So I was doing it purely for fitness. I didn't like any part of it. Like I was just doing it to be in shape. I never enjoyed any aspect of it, and then I started getting the shin splints and the blisters, and so I'm trying to relate, but I want to understand because it's fascinating to me. You're talking about being at the end of this 50-mile race and just shivering and how much pain you were in. What is the appeal?
I think it was just the quest to see how far I could go. Um, could I pull this off? I mean, it seemed so impossible to me to run 100 miles.
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed everything that you just described, the pain, the unpleasantness, the discomfort. I just thought, could I endure? Like, could I actually do this?
Mm-hmm.
And there was so much self-doubt, as you can imagine. But I thought I'll never live it down unless I try. And I made it. And once I made it, I proved that nothing is impossible. And the lessons I learned carry over from running into life. So I was so glad that I ran that 100-mile race because I learned more about myself during those 100 miles than I had ever known before. And it was funny, the guy at the start of the race, he said, look around at the start. There are about 350 of you here. Many of you won't make it. And he said, I applaud you for having the courage to try. And he said, those of you that make it 100 miles, you will cross that finish line as a different person than the one that I'm talking to right now. Ultramarathoning is a thing. There is
Right.
a whole culture of these sort of people like me that run these crazy distances. And some of the races, there is one race, it's a 100-mile race near a prison. It's called Barclays. And there's been less than 20 people that have ever made it, period. And there's been thousands that have tried. So only 20 people have ever finished this race in total.
Wow. And are you one of them?
No, I haven't done that one, but I've done
Okay.
others that are similar. I've done one called the Badwater Ultramarathon, which is 135 miles across Death Valley
Mm.
in the middle of summer,
Mm.
where the temperature gets up to over 120
Yeah.
degrees.
I think it's always so much more about the mental game, the mental aspect of it, than it actually is the physical. Obviously, you still have to train your body, you have to be in shape, you have to do all those things. But it really comes down to that belief in yourself because you mentioned that self doubt, all of those probably, negative thoughts that may pop up in your mind. But it's really just knowing that you can do it, believing in yourself, and then pushing yourself a little bit further. And probably also a little bit of the thrill of, completing that next challenge and pushing yourself to the next level. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, so much so. And I think with this particular sport, it teaches you about grittiness and perseverance because you face all those things that you describe when you run. It sucks, right? You have blisters, you're nauseous, everything hurts, and all you want to do is stop. And how do you find the inner resolve, the inner strength to keep going? Either through mental tricks or just sheer toughness and stubbornness, you get through it. And you learn that, God, I can get through things that I thought I'd never be able to get through. And, that helps when you're in business situations, when you're in just general life situations.
So what would that be for you, or what are some of those things that's been for you that you kind of see that translate to another area of your life that you feel like, hey, this kind of mental fortitude that I've built up through running has really helped me in these situations in other areas of my life?
It certainly taught me about patience. When you're running 100 miles, it's not a sprint.
Yeah.
You need to pace yourself.
Yeah.
So it teaches you about patience. It teaches you about discipline. You can't fake your way through a 100-mile race. You have to train. So preparation, you can't skimp in your preparation. You learn very quickly if you take shortcuts, they don't work. So you learn about that same sort of thing when you're going to give a business presentation. You don't take shortcuts
Right.
because it leads to a failure or a product that's subpar.
Mm.
You also learn that, you're tougher than you think you are, and you can go further than you think you can. So that, again, that grittiness and that resolve to get through anything carries over from running.
Yeah, no, I love that. You're tougher than you think you are. Totally. And I love that lesson of it. What would be your advice for, let's say, someone who, you know, is somewhat fit but doesn't run, let's say, and is interested in starting? Is there any advice that you could give to someone who's just kind of in those early stages of wanting to incorporate more running in their lives?
Yeah, I mean, my practical advice is just invest in a good pair of shoes.
Mm, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, running footwear technology in the past couple of years has advanced so far. So, go to a running specialty store
Mm-hmm.
and get a good pair of, have a knowledgeable salesperson fit you in a good pair of shoes, and you'll be a lot more comfortable. And then I would say, start by running for time, not distance. So you don't need any sort of sophisticated GPS watch, or you don't even need to use your phone. Just you can use a wristwatch and just try to run for 5 continuous minutes. And to a seasoned athlete, they're going to say, "Oh, come on, that's easy." But to someone just starting out, 5 minutes is tough when you're just starting out running, and it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is to run for 5 continuous minutes. And when I tell people this challenge, they take off like they're sprinting, and they make it about 3 minutes, and then they got to walk. And I say, well, you failed. The
Mm.
idea is to start walking when you hit 5 minutes. So just pace yourself so that you can run 5 minutes, and at the end of 5 minutes, you're spent. But don't walk before 5 minutes. And then work up to 10 minutes, and then work up to 15 minutes. And once you can run 15 continuous minutes, then try to run what's called a 5K, which is 3.1 miles. And kind of that progression will build your endurance. Be patient. You
Mm.
don't see the benefits of running right away. And that's one of the problems. A lot of people give up before it gets easier, but I promise you it will get easier, but it takes time.
Mm-hmm. And when you say you don't see the benefits of running right away, what are some of those benefits?
Mentally, it's very good for your mental state.
Mm.
Obviously, it's good for your physical state. Your blood pressure decreases. Your resting heart rate goes down. We know about endorphins, right? You get that good feeling, that runner's high. So all of those things, running is the single, the best return on your fitness investment is running. I mean, there's no other pure sport other than maybe just doing burpees, but
Mm-hmm.
those you can only do so many burpees. So running is just, once you start running, you're running. I mean, like I cycle as well, so I do a lot of riding, and there are these things they call junk miles when you're riding a bike, where you're just kind of coasting. With running, there's just no coasting. If you're running, your heart rate's elevated, and you're moving.
Hmm. Okay. So fast forward to now. We kind of you told me about the early 30s or so in this transition. Well, I'm curious as to what your family and your friends said. At what point do you say goodbye corporate America and turn this into your career?
Yeah, so I did all the things that a runner can relate to. I kept up my game face when I was at the office. I pretend I was still in the game, but when my friends would go to lunch, I'd say, oh, I'm not going to join you for lunch today. I'd go for a 1 hour run, and I'd like do a sponge bath in the sink and go back to my cubicle. Uh, and I did that, kind of that moonlighting as a runner for quite a while.
Okay.
And then I thought, I always wanted to write a book. So I wrote this book called Ultramarathon, man. And I thought, if five of my buddies buy this book, I'll be lucky. And it was a New York Times bestseller. Like it just
Congratulations.
sold hundreds of thousands of copies.
Hmm.
And I thought, why are people interested in this obscure sport of ultra marathoning? Like, it's just so bizarre to me. It's not what I expected at all. But I saw that there was something beyond running. This ultra marathoning transcended running in a certain way, and it inspired people. It really
Yes.
motivated and energized people. So I thought maybe you can make a go of it, just dedicating your life to being an ultra marathoner.
So it sounds like the turning point for you was really the book.
Yep. Yeah,
And
it very much was.
what do you think it was about the book that caught on, that so many people ended up buying it? I mean, did you have the marketing and the publisher behind you? Like, how did that all happen where it just took off?
That was a bizarre thing. I mean, it was Penguin Books published a book, but my editor, he didn't really do much. He just said, "Oh, go write the book." He didn't give me much guidance. I thought, I'm not a writer, so I got to learn how to write. And I just turned in the manuscript, and he said, "Oh, thanks." And the book went to press, and all of a sudden, it was like a wildfire. Just I started getting calls from like David Letterman's show and uh, Good Morning America, 60 Minutes, and I'm like, why are they wanting to interview me? It energizes people hearing that another person can run 100 miles and that someone did it, and like talking to someone who says I ran 100 miles, because the first time I heard it, it was just shocking. Like as I explained, I couldn't get my head around it. I thought that's impossible. And when you talk to someone and realize, no, they're just another human being, and they did this, it energizes you, I think, in a certain way. And I think that the book, it's about running in a way, but it's not what you would expect. Like if I was gonna say, here, read my book, I'm a runner, it's a book about running, you would think, oh, this is not going to be a very interesting book. But it's not at all about running. It's very different than that. And so many people that read the book say, wow, that's not what I expected at all. It was just amazing. And that I never get tired of hearing that.
So tell us a little bit, what people can expect from the book and also where we can find it.
Well, my most recent book is called The Runner's High. And,
Mm.
I mean, just before we came in the interview, I was looking through my email, and there was an email that came in through my website. And it was a guy said that he was going to read a couple chapters of my book last night. And he said 6 hours later, he finished the book. And then he said, and then I went running. Like I had to go running. And I said, were you a runner? He's like, no, I used to run when I was in college, but I haven't run in years. And it just inspired him to go running. So it's a story about family. It's a story about overcoming hardship, dealing with obstacles, dealing with adversity, and somehow persisting.
Time magazine named you one of their 10 most influential people.
It was 100. They have a
Okay.
Time magazine,
Oh, you're
100
right.
most.
Yeah. 100
Mm,
most influential people. How did
mm.
that feel, getting that recognition? What did that mean to you?
Weird. They don't tell you. They don't tell you you're even being nominated. Like because they don't want people trying to sway the judges, I
uh,
guess. So I just got an email from a friend. He's like, "You're not gonna believe this. You're one of the 100 most influential people in the world." I thought he was kidding me. I'm like, come on, you got to be kidding. And then I saw the list, and I'm like, oh, the voting must be rigged or something. I don't know how I ended up on that list, but yeah.
it's, this is all very amazing to me, but talking to you, it's like how you just said, oh, that was weird. It almost seems, my perception of your reaction to my questions, feels like you still feel like this is all a little surreal. Is it in some sense?
Not just some sense. I mean, it is surreal. I can't believe it. I mean, yeah, no, in my most recent book, there's a chapter about, I got invited to run into the White House. So I was running across America from Los Angeles to New York City. and the route goes right through Washington, D.C. And as I'm running into Washington, D.C., I get a call from someone that says, "Hey, I'm at the White House. There's an individual here that wants to meet you. Would you mind stopping by on your run?" And I thought it was a prank call. I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah, sure. Who's this individual?" And they said, "Well, her name's Michelle." And I'm like, "Oh, Michelle, like Michelle who?" So I thought it was like maybe like a sous chef in the kitchen or like a security detail was Michelle. And she's like, "Well, her last name's Obama. Like, I know you've been running across the country, Dean, but do you know who Michelle Obama is?" I'm like, "Yes, I know who the first lady is. Yes."
Oh my goodness.
And hours later, I'm embracing Michelle Obama on the South Lawn of the White House. And it's a true story. And I write about it, how just absolutely surreal it was running down Pennsylvania Avenue and watching the gate to the White House open, and this guy with a big rifle saying, "Hey, come right through here. She's waiting for you." It
That
was
is
unbelievable. It was just unbelievable. It's like a fairy tale. It was unbelievable. Yeah.
that is unbelievable. I mean, it's actually amazing all the things that running has done for you and the doors it's opened in your life. So, what role does running play in your life today?
Running in so many ways has become my identity. It's people know me as a runner, and I write about it in my book. I'm 100% Greek as well, and the oracle at Delphi. We always hear the saying, "Know thyself." So it's one thing to know thyself, but the second proclamation was, "Be thyself."
Do you feel, and I'm glad that you said that you've achieved happiness, and do you feel like you are truly yourself now in comparison to when you look at that person who is just turning 30 years old and still working in corporate America?
Yeah, I think when you dedicate yourself to your life's passion. I kind of think this is why I was put on earth, just to be a runner. And I know it's just running. It's such a simple act, but it's in my heart. So
Lastly, I always like to ask, I know actually I really loved your tip on those who want to start running. I'm actually going to give that a try with the running for time versus distance. I love that. And then a good pair of running shoes. But I also just like to ask in general, like a health or happiness tip, since that's really, the theme of what we talk about on this show. And if there's anything that you practice on a daily basis or that you implement in your life that's an important part of your health and wellness routine that maybe you would give as advice to others that you feel like is helpful.
wow, I'd love to spend the whole interview on that question. But one again practical tip is something that I've been doing for about 10 years. I from the moment I get out of bed in the morning until the moment I go back into bed at night, I never sit down. So you can see even now I'm standing up during this interview.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm driving somewhere, if I'm on a plane, obviously I have to sit down. But
Right.
other than that, I literally never sit down.
You see my face right now. Okay, so now we have. Okay, you never sit down from the moment you get up.
No, and you'd be amazed if when people try it, they always say to me, "Well, aren't you exhausted at the end of the day?" The reality is you feel so much more energetic at the end of the day versus sitting. So I do all my writing, I do everything standing up.
How long have you been doing that?
Over 10 years.
10 years.
Mm.
Holy. And I'm guessing that probably has a lot of health benefits too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly bending my knees and bouncing up on my toes, so I'm conditioning my feet. Yeah, I think I would just highly recommend it.
You would highly recommend it.
Mm.
Okay, so how would one start? Okay, I'm guessing you'd have to have a standing desk. Um,
I'll tell you a hack because I learned
Tell
this
me a
hack because
hack because I'm
I
thinking
do
through all the
travel a
things.
lot, and whenever I go to a hotel, I always ask if there's an ironing board in my room. An iron like an old-fashioned ironing board, and I always get weird looks like, why does this guy want an ironing board? All he's got is running gear. But anyway, uh, set up an ironing board and make that your stand-up desk.
Okay. And then anything else that we should think about that would prevent us? I mean, I guess you got to stay away from the couch.
Don't be tempted.
Yeah.
I mean, you think it's weird, but a lot of times you see people eating standing up at a counter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I mean, if I'm going to eat with my family and we're going to have a sit down dinner, yes, I sit down. But if not, I eat standing up, and I just feel like it helps my digestion and everything.
Wow. Huh. I mean, is this something like the running that you have to start with 5 minutes a day and build up to it? Or are we just going like full
I say it's
day?
baptism by fire. Just set up that ironing board and hop in. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I love it. I have to say that is a tip I have never heard before on this show. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else, Dean, that I didn't ask you that you want to add?
No, I think this is great. I mean, I live on the West Coast, so if any of the listeners find yourself up in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area and you want to go running, hit me up and I'll show you some nice paths.
Oh my gosh, that's so nice. And also share with us where we can find the book, connect with you on social media, on the website, all the places. So I'll make sure we link to that below as well.
Someone told me if you Google Dean, I'm the first one that comes up. So just Google Dean and you can type in a K for my last name. And yeah, I mean, I've got a website, I'm on social media, and all my books are there. So I'm not hard to find.
All right, we'll make sure to link to all those below as well. So we can find you on social media, find the website, and also find your 5 books. Awesome. Well, thanks, Dean. This has really been eye-opening and honestly some of the most practical, useful tips that I've heard. So thank you so much for that.
Always happy to share. And again, thanks for having me on.
I am truly blown away by Dean's wild stories from running 30 miles at night during his 30th birthday and all of his other wild runs since then. It's truly mind-boggling, but admirable. So if you're interested in learning more about Dean, make sure to go below in the show notes, find more about him, connect with him, all the good things that's down below. And if you aren't also connected with me, make sure you do that too. I don't know why not. I would hate for you to miss out because we come back each and every week with new episodes. So you want to stay connected. I'm on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm all the places. Turn on notifications and you won't miss out. So when I see you back next week, because I know I'll see you then, stay happy, stay healthy.